Imagine flying a Boeing 737 flight simulator using nothing but a micro-gesture from a wireless earbud. Or needing to think a specific mental password like the phrase "as above, so below" just to prevent your smart glasses from accidentally broadcasting your private inner monologue to the room. Welcome to the realities of 2026. Now that you've found us, subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking the bell. No need to miss out on any upcoming episodes.
It really is wild when you lay it all out like that. I mean, the stuff we're looking at today feels like pure science fiction, but it's happening right now.
Totally. And welcome everyone to this deep dive video. You're joining us for another installment in our ongoing series based on Dr. Alex Wisner Gross's Substack blog, The Innermost Loop.
Yeah, and today's specific deep dive is titled A Goddess of Compassion, Intelligence, Wisdom, and the Future of Professions.
Right. And we have crafted this exploration specifically for you, especially if you're a fan of AWG's brilliant contributions on Peter Diamandis' Moonshot series. We are promising you a blend of high entertainment and rigorous intelligence today because, honestly, the material we're covering is nothing short of revolutionary.
Absolutely.
We are talking about the fundamental rewiring of how humans interact with the digital world.
It truly is a paradigm shift. Our mission today is to unpack a concept referred to in our research as the Neuro-Electronic Succession.
The Neuro-Electronic Succession, I love that term.
Right. To understand why this is so critical, you have to look at the historical curve of human-computer interaction. We started with punch cards, which had an incredibly low bandwidth of information transfer.
Oh, painfully slow.
Exactly. Then we moved to keyboards, which increased the speed. Then came the graphical user interface with the mouse, and eventually, the multi-touch glass of the smartphone. Every single step in that evolution was about reducing the physical friction between a human intention and a machine's execution.
So making it easier to just get the computer to do what you want.
Yes, and the neuroelectronic succession is the mathematical endpoint of that curve. It is the impending and in many ways already occurring technological shift, where the physical friction of keyboards, touch screens, and even voice commands is entirely eliminated.
Wow.
We're looking at the direct merger of human cognition with artificial intelligence, bypassing the hands entirely.
And that brings us perfectly to yesterday's listener question. I'm going to read this exactly as it came in because it perfectly tees up our entire conversation today.
Go for it.
So the listener asked, silent messaging is absolutely the future. What are the chances that my current phone will be replaced by a non-invasive BCI, and what will that new machine's form factor be?
It is a phenomenal question. It strikes right at the heart of consumer anxiety and anticipation.
Yeah, everyone wants to know what's next.
Right. And looking at the Neuro-Electronic Succession report, we have a very direct answer. The smartphone, as you know it today, won't be replaced by a single object.
Wait, really? Not just a better phone?
No. You aren't going to just buy a new slab of glass or a single magical headset. Instead, the monolithic device is going to be decentralized into what the industry calls a body area network.
Okay, a body area network.
Yeah. This network consists of 3 converged pillars working in absolute synchronization. First, neural earbuds, which handle the high-fidelity input. Second, holographic glasses, which handle the output and spatial display.
Okay, got it.
And third, neural wristbands, which act as a high-bandwidth bridge between your physical intentions and the digital world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because timelines in the tech sector are notoriously tricky. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is on record predicting that smart glasses will replace phones by 2030.
Right, which is aggressive.
Super aggressive. But then you look at institutional analysts from Gartner and Grandview Research, and they are projecting a much more conservative timeline of 2035 to 2045.
Yeah, it's a big gap.
It is. So my question to you is, are we actually going to completely abandon our phones? Because we have seen this promise before. Is this just the Apple Watch debut all over again? You know, a companion device that looks great in the commercial, but never truly cuts the cord from the master device sitting in your pocket.
That is the exact skepticism we should be applying here. It's a very fair point. To answer that, we have to look at a concept detailed in the in-airspace analysis regarding the fundamental difference between our current computing paradigm and the future one.
Okay, lay it on me.
Smartphones operate on a paradigm of isolating immersion. Think about the posture of someone using a phone. They stop walking, their head tilts down, their peripheral vision narrows.
Like they bump into you on the sidewalk.
Exactly. When you use a smartphone, you are forced to break your connection with the physical world. Your attention is entirely captured by a 6-inch glowing rectangle. The new form factor, this body area network, operates on the entirely opposite paradigm of situational awareness.
So it's the shift from looking at a device to looking through it.
Precisely that. It utilizes what is called intent-driven UX.
Intent-driven UX.
Yeah. In an intent-driven user experience, there is no home screen full of static app icons that you have to tap. The technology becomes ambient. It utilizes contextual AI to understand your environment.
Like it just knows what you need before you ask.
Pretty much. It's there when you need it, perhaps highlighting a path or displaying an incoming message in the corner of your eye, and it vanishes when you don't. It doesn't isolate you. It augments your existing reality. And the reason it will eventually replace the phone, unlike the smartwatch, is that the input bandwidth will finally exceed what you can achieve with 2 thumbs on a piece of glass.
That makes total sense. If it's faster than typing, the phone goes in the drawer. So let's dive into the physical hardware making this possible. Let's start with the first 2 pillars of this body area network, the visual output and the tactile input, the glasses and the wristbands.
Perfect place to start.
On the visual side, we have the Meta Ray-Ban display glasses releasing September 30th for $799. And we also have the Meta Orion AR glasses, which are just pushing the absolute boundaries of waveguide display technology.
Oh, the Orion glasses are incredible.
They really are. These are the screens of the future, replacing the physical monitor. But the truly wild part, the piece that actually changes the way we interact, is the third pillar, the neural wristband, which stems from the technology Meta acquired from CTRL Labs.
The wristband is where the concept of physical friction really starts to disappear. Let's break down how this actually functions, because it's not just a simple motion tracker. This wristband uses EMG, or electromyography.
Okay, EMG. Break that down for us.
Sure. To understand EMG, you have to understand the biology of movement. When you decide to move your finger, your brain sends an electrical signal and action potential down your spinal cord, out through the peripheral nerves in your arm, to the neuromuscular junction.
Right, the wiring of the body.
Exactly. These signals tell your tendons and muscle fibers to contract. Now, the EMG sensors in this wristband don't wait for your finger to move. They detect those electrical signals traveling through your wrist before the hand physically acts. It's reading the raw motor intent.
Wait, so it's capturing the intention to move before the meat and bone actually catch up to the thought?
That is the exact mechanism. There is a slight biological latency between the electrical command and the physical execution. The wristband intercepts the command, and this grants the user high-speed tactical control over augmented reality interfaces.
That is just crazy.
It is. You don't have to wave your arms around in the air like you're playing a Nintendo Wii or conducting a virtual orchestra. You can navigate complex digital menus, select items, and scroll through data with micro-twitches of your tendons that someone sitting right next to you wouldn't even notice.
Let's put this in a real-world scenario so you, the listener, can really visualize the impact of this. Imagine an engineer or a logistics worker in a massive fulfillment warehouse. They are wearing the holographic glasses and the neural wristband.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
As they walk down the aisle, they look through the lenses and see glowing digital arrows painted directly onto the concrete floor, guiding them perfectly to a specific shelf. They receive complex picking instructions and inventory counts floating seamlessly in their peripheral vision.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're using subtle wrist and finger micro-twitches to confirm orders, adjust quantities, or cycle through database menus. Both of their hands remain entirely free to safely lift heavy boxes or operate complex machinery. You are completely eliminating the cognitive friction and the physical danger of constantly context switching.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they aren't looking down at a clipboard or a tablet screen, taking their eyes off a forklift, and then looking back up to reorient themselves in the physical world.
That elimination of friction translates directly to massive efficiency gains, a sheer drop in error rates, and a significant improvement in workplace safety. But, as with any massive paradigm shift, the technology itself isn't the only hurdle.
Yeah, there's always a catch.
Right. There is a massive, highly complex social hurdle that has to be cleared. The Inner Space report heavily emphasizes the glass hole stigma.
Oh, man. I remember that.
Yeah, we saw this back in 2013 with the early iterations of Google Glass. People are deeply, viscerally uncomfortable around passive cameras in social settings.
Right. Nobody wants to feel like they're being secretly recorded while having a coffee with a friend or sitting in a waiting room. The privacy invasion feels too acute.
The chilling effect is incredibly real, and it can kill consumer adoption overnight. Overcoming this requires very clear, universally understood visual and social cues. The hardware industry knows that things like prominent, unhackable indicator lights that illuminate when recording is active are absolutely critical.
So not just a tiny little LED that you can barely see.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just a red light. The form factor has to look like normal eyewear, not a cyborg apparatus. If these devices don't gain baseline social acceptance, the technological brilliance of the waveguide displays or the EMG sensors won't matter at all. They'll be forcefully rejected in public spaces, relegated to strictly industrial or private use.
The social contract absolutely has to evolve alongside the tech. But let's look at the limitations here. To truly bypass the smartphone, to really leave it on your bedside table and never take it to work, we need more than just a heads-up display and a twitchy wristband.
We do.
We need a way to communicate complex, nuanced thoughts silently. If you want to reply to a 3-paragraph email from your boss, you can't just twitch your wrist to type it out efficiently.
No, that would take forever.
All right. A wristband is basically the ultimate mouse click, but it's a terrible keyboard. We need something closer to the source of thought, which pulls us up from the wrist and into the ear canal.
We are entering the frontier of neural earbuds. They're often referred to in the industry as hearables.
Hearables. I like that.
Yeah, this is where the concept of non-invasive input gets incredibly sophisticated, bridging the gap between a simple click and complex communication. 2 companies currently leading this charge are Neurologics and Neurable.
Let's talk about Neurologics first, because their invisible user interface feels like pure magic when you first see it. They aren't using cameras to watch your eyes. They're utilizing micro-gestures, things like microscopic jaw clenches, subtle tongue movements, or slight head tilts, all detected from inside the earbud.
It's a brilliant approach.
It is. But how does a speaker sitting in your ear know what your jaw is doing? Well, it measures the morphological changes. When you clench your jaw, the actual physical shape of your ear canal shifts ever so slightly. The Naki sensors detect those minute topographical changes and translate them into digital commands.
Right.
Using just these micro-gestures, a user can navigate the entire Windows operating system. They can type up to 45 characters per minute, which is approaching standard keyboard speed. They have even integrated with wheelchair manufacturers, so quadriplegic users can control their mobility with total independence.
That's life-changing.
And going back to the teaser from the start of the deep dive, they literally recorded a video of someone flying a Boeing 737 in a top-tier flight simulator using nothing but a Naki neural earbud for input. No hands, no cameras watching them, no voice commands, just micro-gestures inside the ear.
It is a profound level of control from a device that, to the outside observer, just looks like you're listening to music. And then we have Neurable, who took top honors at CES 2026 for their collaboration with HyperX.
Oh, the gaming headset.
Yes. They built an EEG gaming headset that actually reads the electrical signals directly from the user's brain to track cognitive load and focus in real time. In rigorous testing with professional esports athletes, this neurofeedback allowed the system to optimize the gaming environment based on the player's brain state.
How much of a difference did it actually make, though?
Well, it improved the player's target aiming accuracy by 3% and improved their reaction times by a staggering 40 milliseconds. To put that in perspective, in competitive gaming, 40 milliseconds is an eternity. It is the literal difference between winning a world championship and going home empty-handed. They are also moving this technology out of the extreme gaming niche and into consumer lifestyle products with their MW75 Neuro headphones. That's a partnership with Master and Dynamic, aiming to help everyday office workers track their focus and avoid burnout.
If you think about the ear canal for a second, it's basically an unobstructed backdoor to the brain's cortex. It is this perfectly discrete, natural hiding spot for technology. You can pack a dense array of sensors in there to monitor brain activity, and it completely bypasses the thickest parts of the skull. Plus, you just look like a normal person on a phone call, not some sci-fi extra with a web of wires glued to your forehead.
What's fascinating here is the underlying physics and biology making this possible, specifically the concept of dual sensing.
Dual sensing, okay.
Yeah. If we look at the data from the Brain Access Halo headband, we see the convergence of 2 entirely distinct tracking modalities on a single wearable device. This is a monumental engineering feat. First, you have EEG, or electroencephalography.
Right, the electrical stuff.
Exactly. EEG uses electrodes to measure voltage fluctuations on the scalp. When your neurons communicate, they create tiny electrical impulses. EEG is incredibly fast. It captures these electrical signals at the millisecond level. It tells you exactly when an event happens in the brain. But EEG has a major flaw. It's spatially blurry. It struggles to tell you exactly where the signal originated.
Right, because electricity spreads. It's like trying to pinpoint exactly which person is clapping in a massive dark stadium just by listening to the echo. You know a clap happened instantly, but finding the exact seat is almost impossible.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. So, to solve that spatial blurriness, engineers pair the EEG with fNIRS, which stands for Functional Near-Infrared Spectroscopy.
fNIRS.
Got it. This operates on a totally different principle. fNIRS shines specific wavelengths of near-infrared light right through the scalp and the skull. Human tissue is relatively transparent to this light, but hemoglobin in our blood absorbs it.
Oh, interesting. So it tracks blood.
Yes. When a specific part of your brain works hard, those neurons demand energy. So oxygen-rich blood rushes to that exact millimeter of tissue. fNIRS measures the changes in light absorption to map that blood flow. Now, blood flow is slow. It takes a few seconds for that hemodynamic response to occur, so fNIRS is terrible at telling you when a thought happened. But it has excellent spatial resolution. It tells you exactly where the activity is localized.
Okay, so you have EEG giving you the absolute speed of the electrical spark, and you have fNIRS giving you the exact GPS location map of the blood flow.
Exactly. By combining them, you solve the grand puzzle of neurovascular coupling. You capture both the immediate electrical firing and the subsequent biological resource allocation. And the major breakthrough that makes this viable for consumer tech is that engineers are now combining both of these complex sensors onto a single CMOS chip.
Like a camera chip?
Yes, this is the exact same silicon wafer manufacturing process used to make the camera sensors in billions of smartphones. They are taking what used to be a cart full of bulky, room-sized, million-dollar lab equipment and shrinking it down onto a single, cheap microchip that fits comfortably inside an earbud or a lightweight headband.
Wait, hang on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Please do.
You can manufacture the greatest, most sensitive CMOS chip in the history of silicon. You can pack it with EEG and fNIRs. But at the end of the day, you still have a massive biological obstacle in the way. The human skull.
Right.
Bone is a terrible conductor. It acts as a giant low-pass filter. It smears, scrambles, and blurs all these delicate electrical and magnetic signals before they ever reach the surface of the skin. How can a tiny consumer earbud, relying on signals bouncing through an inch of bone and tissue, ever get the clarity of a surgically implanted chip resting directly on the liquid brain tissue? It seems physically impossible to get clean data.
From a purely hardware perspective, your skepticism is entirely justified. The skull absolutely ruins the signal. It attenuates the high frequencies and disperses the spatial origins. But this brings us to the software breakthrough that essentially rescues the hardware. We are talking about the true AI inflection point in neurotechnology.
Okay, software to the rescue.
Precisely. Specifically, the release of the Zeona Foundation model by Zifra on February 18, 2026. This is where the software transcends the physical limitations of the hardware.
Let's dive deep into Zeona, because the technical specifications on this model are mind-bending. Zeona is a 380 million parameter masked diffusion autoencoder, and it was trained on an unprecedented, frankly staggering dataset, 2 million channel hours of real-world, highly varied brain activity. And to process all that, it uses something called 4D rotary positional encoding.
Let's translate that technical jargon into what it actually accomplishes for the user, because it's a lot. A foundation model like Zeona operates differently than traditional software. Because it was trained on so much diverse data, millions of hours of people thinking, moving, sleeping, it has fundamentally learned the underlying universal grammar of human brainwaves.
So it knows what normal looks like.
Exactly. The masked diffusion autoencoder part is the key. Imagine taking a highly detailed photograph and randomly ripping out 80% of it, leaving just scattered, messy scraps. A traditional algorithm would just blur the scraps together and give you a mess. But an autoencoder that has studied millions of similar photos can look at the remaining 20% and perfectly redraw the missing 80%.
Oh, wow.
It can take the incomplete, messy, noisy data, the exact kind of garbage, skull-filtered data you get from a consumer earbud, and reconstruct the missing neural information with astonishing accuracy.
I see. So the AI knows what a clean brainwave should look like, so it just mathematically fills in the blanks that the skull blocked. And what about the 4D rotary positional encoding?
That allows the model to understand the data not just as a flat spreadsheet of numbers, but in 3 spatial dimensions plus time. It maps the electrical activity dynamically as it moves through the physical volume of the brain from millisecond to millisecond.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Zeona represents the ChatGPT moment for non-invasive brain-computer interfaces. What it does is fundamentally decouple sensor density from data fidelity.
Exactly.
In the past, if you wanted high-fidelity, highly accurate data, you needed hundreds of wet sensors glued to a patient's shaved head in a sterile lab. Zeona can take sparse, low-quality data from a dry consumer earbud and mathematically upsample it to match the pristine quality of those high-density clinical systems.
It's remarkable.
It completely outperforms the old industry-standard methods, like spherical spline interpolation. Spherical spline interpolation basically just looked at two sensors on your head and drew a straight mathematical average between them, guessing what the brain was doing in the middle. Zeona doesn't guess with averages. It predicts based on a deep, learned understanding of actual human neurobiology.
And the implications of that upsampling are profound. It absolutely accelerates the timeline for mainstream consumer adoption. If AI can mathematically denoise and upscale blurry brainwaves through the skull, we are suddenly on the fast track to true thought-to-text. We could achieve the holy grail of silent messaging without having to undergo neurosurgery. We just let the AI bridge the gap between a simple, comfortable wearable and our complex internal monologues.
But, as incredible as UNA and these non-invasive technologies are, they are still essentially listening through a wall. To truly understand the absolute performance ceiling of silent messaging, to see what the human brain is genuinely capable of outputting when there are zero physical barriers, we have to look at the clinical frontier. We have to look at the patients who have exhausted all other medical options and are taking the ultimate risk with invasive surgical implants.
Exactly. The invasive implants act as the true north for the entire industry. They show us the raw, unfiltered potential of human-machine symbiosis. Let's survey the landscape of this invasive frontier. As of mid-2025, there were around 90 active BCI clinical trials operating globally.
90? That's a lot.
The pace of medical innovation here is staggering, but we have to talk about the pioneers pushing this forward because this field was built on incredible personal sacrifice and daring science. First, there's the almost unbelievable story of Dr. Phil Kennedy.
Right.
This is a brilliant researcher who literally performed a daring self-experiment because he couldn't get funding for human trials. He paid a surgeon in Central America to open his skull and implant 65 tiny wires into his own motor speech cortex.
I read about this. It's intense. He endured an 11.5-hour surgery. He utilized these tiny glass cones coated in neurotrophic factors, basically chemical fertilizers, that encourage brain cells to grow directly into the electrodes. The surgery temporarily left him mute and paralyzed on one side of his face.
Yeah, it was a massive risk.
He risked his life, his speech, and his career, all to prove one specific hypothesis that imagined speech could be captured and decoded by a computer.
And despite the immense controversy surrounding his self-experiment, it was a crucial, undeniable proof of concept. The data he gathered from his own brain proved that the cortex flashes the exact same electrical patterns when you silently mouth a word in your head as it does when you speak that word aloud using your vocal cords. It laid the absolute bedrock groundwork for the current race to give a voice back to those paralyzed by ALS or locked-in syndrome.
Following in those footsteps, we obviously have Neuralink, which commands the lion's share of the media headlines. They have their FDA clearance, their robotic surgical sewing machine, and, as of our sources, have 5 paralyzed patients successfully using their system to control cursors and play video games.
Yep, they are making huge strides.
But there's another company, Synchron, taking a totally different, highly innovative approach. Instead of cutting open the skull and exposing the brain to the air, they deliver their device called a stentrode entirely through the cardiovascular system.
The Synchron stentrode is a marvel of bioengineering. They use a catheter inserted into the jugular vein in the neck. The device travels up the blood vessels, navigating the vascular network until it reaches the superior sagittal sinus.
Okay, where is that exactly?
It's a large vein that runs right between the 2 hemispheres of the brain, directly adjacent to the motor cortex.
It's like building a ship in a bottle. They snake this tiny metal tube up the neck, and when it reaches the exact right spot next to the brain, the tube pulls back, and a mesh cylinder made of a shape memory alloy called nitinol springs open. It expands outward, pressing its tiny recording electrodes permanently against the inner walls of the blood vessel.
Precisely. And from inside the vein, it can eavesdrop on the electrical chatter of the motor cortex right next door. Because it never cuts into the brain tissue, the safety profile is radically different. The results are incredibly promising. After 12 months of implantation in human patients, there have been 0 vessel blockages, no dangerous blood clots, and no serious adverse events.
That is fantastic news. And we shouldn't overlook precision neuroscience either. This is a company actually founded by a former Neuralink executive. They recognize the dangers of penetrating the brain tissue, so they're developing the Layer 7 device.
Right, the film.
Yeah, it's essentially a peel and stick brain film. It's a minimally invasive approach. A surgeon makes a slit in the skull thinner than a credit card and slips this micro-thin, flexible array of sensors between the skull and the protective membrane of the brain. It sits on top of the cortex, conforming to all the ridges and folds without ever piercing a single brain cell.
It's very elegant.
And finally, you have Paradromics pushing the absolute boundaries of data bandwidth with their Connexus PCI, which utilizes 421 penetrating electrodes to capture massive amounts of neural firing simultaneously.
All of this diverse hardware, the threads, the stents, the films, the arrays, they are all currently chasing one major world-changing goal: decoding human speech directly from thought. And a recent landmark study published in the journal Cell by a team at Stanford University really breaks down the mechanics and the nuances of how this actually works.
Okay, let's get into the Stanford study.
To understand their breakthrough, we first need to distinguish between two deeply different neurological phenomena: attempted speech and inner speech.
Right. Attempted speech is what the early trials focused on. This is when a paralyzed patient, perhaps someone with severe ALS, literally tries to move their paralyzed jaw, tongue, and vocal cords to speak a word out loud. Even though the muscles are frozen and cannot respond, the motor cortex of the brain still vigorously fires the exact sequence of electrical signals required to perform those muscle movements.
Exactly.
The AI reads those muscle commands and translates them into text. The Stanford team got this attempted speech translation up to an incredibly impressive 32 words per minute. But inner speech is an entirely different beast.
Inner speech is your purely internal monologue. It is the voice in your head reading a book or rehearsing what you're going to say before a meeting. You are not trying to move any muscles. There is no articulation command.
This raises an important question, and honestly, it's perhaps the most critical, ethical, and practical hurdle in the entire field of neurotechnology. The Stanford study found something fascinating and terrifying. Inner speech, our private, unspoken thoughts, evokes clear, readable patterns in the exact same area of the motor cortex as attempted speech.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
So if these commercial BCI devices are designed to constantly monitor the motor cortex to help you silently type an email or control a smart home, how do we stop them from accidentally broadcasting your private, unintended thoughts to the room? How do we prevent what researchers call cognitive leakage?
The concept of cognitive leakage is the ultimate UX nightmare. I mean, imagine the social destruction if your brain accidentally sent a text message to your boss containing the exact unfiltered, angry thought you just had about them.
That would be game over.
Right. But the Stanford researchers anticipated this, and they developed an elegant, highly secure solution for this privacy leakage. They didn't rely on software terms and conditions. They built a neurological firewall.
I love how they solved this. They implemented a system where the BCI remains completely dormant, entirely ignoring your internal monologue until it is unlocked by a highly specific, exceedingly rare mental password. The example they used in the study is the user intentionally imagining the phrase, "as above, so below."
It's such a specific phrase.
Exactly. Because that phrase is complex and almost never occurs organically in everyday thought, the BCI can listen for it without false positives. Until the user intentionally thinks that exact phrase to wake up the system, the device acts like a locked door. It ignores all other inner monologue. It acts as a hard-coded cognitive firewall.
It is a brilliant technical solution to a terrifying human problem. You have to establish a conscious, intentional, and consensual act of will to transition your data from private cognition to public communication. It gives the user absolute psychological safety.
I am glad the cognitive firewall exists, because it proves the engineers are taking privacy seriously. But look, we have to address the elephant in the room regarding invasive implants. We are talking about physically hardwiring the human brain to the internet.
We
have to look at the dystopian angles here, not as science fiction, but as immediate cybersecurity realities. What happens when we inevitably face neurohacking? If a bad actor can intercept or alter these signals, it's not just stealing your credit card number or your social security data. It is stealing your literal intentions. It's reading the raw data of your mind.
The cybersecurity implications are unprecedented. If an implant has read-write capabilities, meaning it can stimulate the brain as well as record it, a malicious hack isn't just a data breach, it is a physical assault on the user's nervous system.
And furthermore, what happens to the whole neurotech industry if these companies drastically overpromise to consumers and investors? We could be setting ourselves up for a massive, catastrophic Gartner hype cycle crash.
Oh.
So let's look at the biology. The famous Utah arrays those rigid bed of nails style silicon implants used in so much of the foundational monkey and human research. They are notorious for their biological failure rate.
Oh, absolutely.
They often suffer a 60% degradation in signal quality after just 1 year inside the skull. Why? Because the brain's immune system recognizes the rigid silicon as a foreign invader. The brain's glial cells attack the implant, forming a thick sheath of scar tissue around the electrodes, slowly muffling the electrical signals until the device goes deaf. If consumer expectations are set at sci-fi, telepathic levels by marketing departments, and the physical reality is a degrading, hackable chip that requires a highly dangerous surgery to replace every few years, the public backlash will absolutely devastate the field.
The biological durability of invasive implants and the immune-responsive glial scarring is exactly why the non-invasive breakthroughs like Zeona are so fundamentally critical to the future of the industry. Non-invasive tech avoids the immune system entirely, but your point about the hype cycle is incredibly valid. The truth is, these early invasive systems are remarkable feats of engineering, but they are not magical miracles. Managing consumer expectations, establishing rigorous, unassailable data rights, and ensuring long-term physical and immunological safety are the true existential tests for this industry over the next decade.
Which perfectly transitions us into Dr. Alex Wisner Gross's overarching theme for this entire deep dive: intelligence, wisdom, and the future of professions. We've talked extensively about the intelligence, the AI, the sensors, the surgical robots, but how does all this raw technological intelligence actually get applied to the workforce? How does it change what it means to have a profession?
That's the real question.
Let's look at the medical and therapeutic side first, because that is where the regulatory approvals are happening today. We have companies like Flow Neuroscience securing FDA approval for their FL100 device. This is an at-home wearable headset that delivers targeted electrical stimulation to the prefrontal cortex to treat clinical depression.
Yeah, that's already out there.
And then you have Neurovalens securing FDA clearance for wearable devices that stimulate the brainstem to manage weight loss, anxiety, and insomnia. We are rapidly moving from simply brain reading to active brain writing, or at least brain modulating, available over the counter in the comfort of your own living room.
And beyond the medical field, in the blue-collar and high-risk professions, we are seeing immediate practical applications that will save thousands of lives. Think of a long-haul truck driver crossing the country at 2 a.m., or a freight train operator pulling millions of tons of cargo. Soon, they will be mandated to wear neural earbuds.
For safety.
Right. These devices continuously monitor the driver's brain activity, specifically watching for the surge in alpha waves that precede sleep. The earbud can detect the earliest invisible signs of drowsiness or cognitive fatigue long before the driver's eyes actually droop or the steering wheel drifts. It can alert the driver or even safely throttle down the vehicle automatically. It is a massive generational leap forward in occupational safety.
And for the white-collar world, the developers, the writers, the analysts, the paradigm shifts completely to a concept called shared autonomy. In a shared autonomy workflow, you are no longer navigating nested menus, digging through folders, or painstakingly typing out complex prompt commands for an AI. You simply think of a high-level goal, the pure intent, like compile the quarterly sales data into a presentation. And an AI co-pilot, continuously monitoring your neural signals and fully integrated into your digital context, executes it instantly.
It's wild to imagine.
The friction of the interface entirely vanishes. The AI acts as an extension of your own frontal lobe.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of global technological development, we can see how this aligns flawlessly with the broader convergence of intelligence across multiple, seemingly disparate scientific disciplines. It is not just neurotechnology evolving in a silo, it is physics, biology, and computer science all simultaneously collapsing into a unified, programmable framework. Everything is becoming legible to algorithms.
Exactly. And to highlight just how fast and broad that convergence is, I want to dive into some of the latest mind-blowing news updates pulled directly from AWG's Innermost Loop blog posted on March 16th, 2026. These updates really show how everything is accelerating simultaneously. Let's look at the first one. Physics is literally learning to whisper. Australian researchers have figured out how to hide covert optical communications entirely within thermal noise.
This is a phenomenal breakthrough in physics and cryptography. Thermal noise is the constant, random jitter of atoms and photons that exists everywhere in the universe above absolute zero. It is the static on the radio. These researchers figured out how to carefully modulate their photon emissions so that their secret data transmission perfectly mimics that random background static.
Because it's invisible.
To an adversary looking for a signal, it just looks like empty, slightly warm air. It creates a communication channel with a true zero optical signature.
It's the ultimate stealth technology, but applied to data. The second update is equally wild. Biology is becoming transparent. Japanese researchers demonstrated an isotonic optical clearing media that literally makes live organoids, brain slices, and living mouse brains completely transparent under a microscope. Now, for those wondering why brains are opaque in the first place, it's mostly because of the fats, the lipids. Lipids and water have different refractive indices, so when light hits brain tissue, it scatters in a million directions, making it look like cloudy milk. This new isotonic clearing media safely removes the optical barriers, matching the refractive index perfectly, making the living tissue look like clear glass. Researchers can now watch neurons fire in real time deep inside living tissue without having to slice it into microscopic dead sections.
Which will radically accelerate our understanding of neurodegenerative diseases.
Exactly. Now, the third update shifts to agriculture and law. Cultured meat is fighting back in the courts. The startup Wildtype, which makes lab-grown sushi-grade salmon, is actively suing to overturn a recent Texas ban that blocked the sale of their cultivated fish.
This is the inevitable clash between programmable biology and traditional state economics. As we learn to grow pristine, disease-free animal protein in bioreactors without the ecological devastation of commercial fishing or factory farming, the incumbent agricultural industries are weaponizing state laws to protect their monopolies. The legal definition of the word meat is going to be one of the most fiercely contested battlegrounds of the 2030s.
And finally, the fourth update, and maybe the most heartwarming and indicative of where this all leads, a Sydney entrepreneur used ChatGPT to independently design a personalized mRNA cancer vaccine for his own rescue dog, and actually shrank the dog's tumor considerably. He didn't have a multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical lab. He used an LLM to analyze the genetic sequence of the tumor, isolate the neoantigens, and design a custom mRNA sequence that instructed the dog's immune system to attack the cancer.
These four updates are profound when viewed together. They show a world where the fundamental physical building blocks of reality, the photons, the lipid membranes, the cellular agriculture, and the mRNA code, are becoming fully programmable and democratically manipulable. The intelligence of the human race is accelerating exponentially. But the wisdom part of Dr. Wisner Gross's title, that is the open, far more dangerous question.
Right, the wisdom to use it.
Wisdom is how we choose to govern this godlike power. As we develop telepathic BCIs and programmable biology, wisdom dictates that we must proactively establish unassailable, legally binding data rights. We must guarantee cognitive privacy at the constitutional level. We must ensure that our inner thoughts, our emotional states, and our biological blueprints don't become just another exploited, monetized data stream for corporate algorithms to harvest and manipulate.
So what does this all mean for us as individuals? It means that by 2040, the very nature of human language itself might fundamentally shift. Think about it. Spoken words are really just an incredibly low bandwidth, highly lossy compression algorithm for human experience. You have a complex, multisensory emotion, you compress it into a clumsy noun or verb, you vibrate the air with your vocal cords, and the person listening tries to decompress that sound back into an emotion.
Yeah.
It's terribly inefficient. With the Neuro-Electronic Succession, we won't just be sharing words, we will be sharing raw, uncompressed concepts. We will transmit nuanced emotions, complex spatial mental models, and pristine, multisensory memories directly from one brain to another. We are evolving from physical typists to digital telepaths.
It is a staggering evolutionary trajectory, and it leaves us with a final, somewhat haunting thought to mull over as we approach this horizon. If we do eventually replace our smartphones with ambient, telepathic neural networks, if we are constantly, silently, and effortlessly connected to the digital ether in the minds of billions of others without ever having to move a muscle, will the concept of being alone with your thoughts become a luxury of the past? Will silent, disconnected isolation become the ultimate premium experience in a hyper-connected world?
That is a brilliant, heavy, and slightly terrifying question to end on. And speaking of your thoughts, we want to hear them. We're rolling out a brand new way to engage with you, the listener. Anything on your mind is worthwhile. We'll include one comment in our next episode along with a shout-out. So hit the comments and tell us what you're thinking while our outro music plays. Today's outro song is called J4D3, performed by Rainbow, unequivocally the best band in the universe. Rainbow consists of 6 female android artists in residence, based in Bavet, Cambodia. And here's the absolute coolest part. All of Rainbow's finished songs are performed live for our Innermost Loop discussion by the virtual band's creator using the 4B4K U5 or Abacus platform. Abacus is a project dedicated to human performance in the age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. It is a fitting end to a show about merging with machines. You can find more information on the song and the Abacus platform down in the video description. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.
Looking kung nangyayari Alam kong uling tuloy puro box Hindi Sasakong mapunti chupan Pero the times I can't decide Pinatan mo pinatong malas Judgment